Hello and welcome to the Cardiac Cats YouTube channel. I'm your host, Jacob Shorba, and we're already here today updating the general manager candidates because we had two things happen, right? One of them is two more candidates entering the list we're going to talk about, who are James Gladstone from the Los Angeles Rams and Josh Williams from the San Francisco 49ers. But we also had news in that someone got their name pulled already. And that is, oh wow, big shock here, the Bucs assistant GM Mike Greenberg. It's just fun to me. Honestly, at this point, I think it's honestly hilarious. Just how long this saga has gone on and the amount of anger that's come from one front office. I'm not sure I've ever seen anything like this in my life, and we should honestly probably just enjoy it because I don't know if we'll ever see anything like this again in our lives. I don't know if I've ever seen someone this mad about something before. But, I mean, we've hashed that out. We've talked about the Liam Cohen stuff, and I get why Bucs fans were frustrated. I get why Liam Cohen made the decision he did. I also think there's some things they kind of glossed over that were kind of crappy from the Bucs side, where they essentially were just going to send in a candidate to do an interview knowing full well they didn't want the job, and if they got what they wanted, they would have screwed our entire process of searching for a head coach over. So I don't feel that bad for him that it blew up in their face. But yeah, this whole thing is just never ending, it seems. And I guess this probably is the end for this cycle, at least. But you have two things here, right? You have one where he's removed his name. So of course we get all the jokes that are like, he'll probably have a secret meeting with the Jaguars tomorrow. And then if you believe what Yardline Yoda reports, which, you know, we could probably have a whole conversation about kind of how to read into some of these insider sources, right? It's talking about even Dilla's account and then, of course, Yardline Yoda's. But apparently, if this is true, this is hilarious. But Jason Light pretty much told Greenberg that he needed to make sure he was getting hired for the job because if he took the interview, he was done in Tampa. Just ridiculous. Like, and honestly, I'm not shocked if this is true, and I would probably say I believe it, because you look at the other people on their staff that they were able to decline promotions for with the Jaguars, that the Jaguars wanted to bring in. They even declined someone who was just a personal friend of Liam Cohen's that came over with him from basically every stop in his career, just to spite Liam Cohen. Like, just the most ridiculous things. And it's not like it's a lateral move. It's going from an assistant to being the guy in charge of a position group. And the Bucs are declining it just because they're angry over the whole process. Like, it's just incredible to me. I don't know how that goes over in your building when you're declining people from getting promotions and you know they probably don't want to be there with you because you're more focused on that than, you know, actually building out what you want to do properly. But this is where we are. And it's, like I said, I think it's kind of funny at this point. And I gave my thoughts on Greenberg as well. I think if you had someone come in with him that was that was really good on the scouting side of things, it could work, right? Greenberg is phenomenal when it comes to really every other part of the job. He has a ton of experience on the business side of things. But the problem is, I didn't think this was someone who had great experience on the scouting side or really anything there that stood out. And I want to get in someone, ideally, who is well-versed in that, who has a long career in it, and really started there. That is my personal preference. So I was kind of against this. So I'm kind of happy that it doesn't work out at the end of the day. But here's the good news for Jacksonville. You lose out on Mike Greenberg, which at this point, good riddance. I'm just tired of it with them. I'm also enjoying it at the same time. But you had two very good candidates because James Gladstone, getting to him, he is the director of scouting strategy for the Los Angeles Rams. So you look at what the Rams have done the last couple of years. They've had some of the best drafts in the NFL. You look at this last draft, the combination of players they brought in Jared Verse and Braden Fisk. I mean, Fisk nearly got to double-digit sacks this year. Maybe he did. I think he was just short, though. But then you also have Jared Verse, who we'll see who's defensive player or defensive rookie of the year. But Verse is very much deserving of that title. He was phenomenal. The guy, when I had scouted him, and I wish I had him higher on my board, honestly, which he was still, I think, like fringe top 10 for me. He was just a pro. He was someone that I think was a very easy player to scout. He's a leader. He's someone who was just going to come into the NFL and probably fit right in from day one. And he did that with the Los Angeles Rams. Immediately coming in, being a top edge rusher, and eventually he's probably going to command a pretty good contract because I think he's going to be a great player. So it was a really good pick by the Los Angeles Rams. Very impressed by that. And Gladstone's a huge part of that. Now, with all these guys, I recommend go try to find videos of them talking. Go try to see how they evaluate things. It's the best way you can kind of get an idea of who these people are, because it's harder to really know which candidates to consider for a general manager position compared to a head coach. Because head coaches, it's pretty simple. Everyone knows the general candidates a lot better. You know the stats. You can go really in detail with it. Whereas for general manager, you're getting people interviewing from different roles. It's not just like offensive coordinators and defensive coordinators. You've got some like this where instead of being an assistant GM, you got a director of scouting strategy. You might have a pro personnel guy that he's in charge of that, director of player personnel or whatever. There's a lot of different positions that you can pull from. But getting into James Gladstone a little bit here, Gladstone has been with the Rams for 8 years, which is good. I mean, you've seen the Rams have a lot of success during that time. He's pretty much, I would assume, I think he came in from the very start with Sean McVay that same year, and he's been in this role for 4 years. So he has been the guy in charge of what has been probably the best drafting in the last 2 years at least. So really impressive stuff there. Aside from that, if you watch videos of how he communicated with people inside the Rams front office, with the coaching staff and all that, I think he's a professional. I think he's someone who understands collaboration, someone who values that, getting everyone's opinions involved. There was even like a clip, if you go watch the Rams offseason videos, where they basically asked all the scouts, what players would you love to have, right? And they went off that in determining some of their strategy. The top guy for them was Jared Verse. And the other side of this was James was one of those guys in that building that understood that it was important that if you wanted to get Jared Verse, you might get a lot more out of him if you got Braden Fisk as well. Because he noticed when he was scouting them that these two players had a bond together. These two players were successful together, and they fed off one another. And so he was able to elevate his draft pick even more because he recognized that, and the Rams decided to go after Braden Fisk. Now, they traded a lot to get Braden Fisk. It was like pick 52 and their second this year. I think it was 39, which is really expensive. So I don't like that side. I don't think Gladstone's really in charge of that, though, to be fair. But ultimately, the scouting experience, the pedigree, and then, the part we don't even have mentioned yet is he's probably got some relationship with Liam Cohen. These guys would have worked together for, maybe 3-4 years? Maybe even more than that. Of course, I don't know how much the director of scouting strategy or whatever role he would have been in before that communicates with a wide receivers coach or the offensive coordinator. But ultimately, these guys should be somewhat familiar with each other. And I would think that makes Gladstone a top candidate for this job. So this is someone I'm very impressed with. I would be completely fine with him being the candidate. He might be my number 2 guy and not far behind Brandon Brown for me, who is my number 1 guy for this job. I think the thing that Gladstone would definitely have over him is the recent success, right? Because, the Giants did have a pretty good draft last year, they've had some very questionable decisions outside of that, especially around free agency. And well, I don't blame everything on Brandon Brown, right? Like it was pretty clear when Schoen was basically telling everyone what they were going to do with Barkley that not many people were on board with that. Like he was basically just telling the whole team, like, or the whole front office, we are getting rid of Barkley. Like, I don't care what you say. This is going to happen. And the arguments were just like almost illogical a lot of the time. So there's context that's important. But regardless, Gladstone, I would definitely say, has had more success recently. So if they went with him, I would be completely fine with it. I think he'd be a phenomenal candidate for this job. Now, the next guy, and the last one we'll talk about in this video, and then hopefully, I don't know. I mean, we'll see if we get more candidates for this job. And if we do, I'll just wait until they're all announced to do a final video. But Joshua Williams, he is the other candidate for this job. Now, I'm going to his LinkedIn to start before we go to this page. But you can see this guy has worked for one team, right? He comes up as a scout through all this time. He's been there for almost, 14 years now? So this is someone who kind of understands the whole process of moving up the ladder, someone who's very familiar with the scouting side of things, someone who actually would have probably been familiar with Trent Baalke while he was there. I know, it's a scary name to say. But, you know, not everyone who knows Trent Baalke is Trent Baalke, so let's be real there. But with Joshua Williams, I thought the way he interviews, the things I've seen from him, very professional. You know, something that stood out. And I guess I am saying that about a lot of candidates, but it is important. And one of the things that he hangs his hat on personally was his role in the process of the team getting Deebo Samuel through the draft. Now, this was a player that he had scouted for 2 years that he was on, because Deebo, I think, ended up returning to school when they thought he might declare. And that happens a lot, right? I've had I think 30 guys that I scouted this year went back to school that I've already got to start on for next year. But looking at Deebo Samuel, obviously he's been a very successful player. He got paid for a reason. And he's been one of the best picks for the 49ers in recent years. And a guy like Joshua Williams was a huge part of that process. You see, Southeast area scout, working in that area, even here before. He is someone who has had that kind of success, who's brought in those types of players, and he has come up in an organization that has functioned very well in recent history, had a lot of success, good people to learn from. That's what's exciting about getting someone like Joshua Williams. Now, see if we got any other nuggets in here. But, I mean, like we said, he has only worked with one team so far. He also worked in the financial industry in New York as a business analyst before this. And I think you see some of that in what he's helping with, where you see he assists in contract negotiations. That was a plus here, right? He's someone who may not just be a scout, because you want a little bit of everything, although, like I've said before, I think evaluating talent is harder to learn than, learning the business side of the NFL. Just my personal opinion as an outsider, which may not hold much because I'm an outsider, but just my thoughts. But Williams has assisted in contract negotiations, which is important, so he's got an idea of how both sides work. I think that's great. That's something you'd love to see, and this is someone who ultimately would be very qualified for the job. Now, the other side as well, the Jaguars are, and I won't go super in detail with this because I could talk about Ethan Waugh here as well. He is going to get interviewed for the job. You can see that. I think he's listed on here. Yeah, the interim is going to get an interview. That is normal. Darrell Bevell got one after Urban Meyer was fired. So just don't freak out about that, would be my thoughts. But I think Ethan Waugh probably sticks around in some sort of role, and so this might be a candidate Jacksonville goes with, because if Ethan Waugh has some influence, well, he might want this guy, right? And that might make sense if you want alignment in the front office. Now, Josh Williams, well, he's probably top half on my list. He's not the top guy per se. So this wouldn't really be the direction I would go at the end of the day, just from what I've seen so far. But I do think he's a very good candidate. I would be completely fine if this is where things landed. But you do like that experience with Ethan Waugh. That would help because Waugh is probably going to stay around. And like I said, he is the other candidate that got added to this list. We've talked about it a little bit before. This is something where, I'll say this. I've only talked to Ethan Waugh one time before. You can't learn a ton from that, but once again, just because you know Trent Baalke doesn't mean you're Trent Baalke. If Ethan Waugh was hired for this job, I'd be disappointed for the reason that I don't think he's done enough to earn it, and that's been a huge issue for me in the past, and that was my whole problem with Trent Baalke in the first place, is that he kind of just failed upwards with the Jaguars. He kept getting more and more power after being unsuccessful, and that's not how things should work in the NFL. But Ethan Waugh is not Trent Baalke. Right? This is a different person, and this is someone who does have that background with the 49ers, which is nice. Right? He did help in getting Liam Cohen to Jacksonville. He's been an important part of the process for the Jaguars this offseason. So, do I think he should have a role with the team? I do think it's fine. I don't have a problem with it. I just think you shouldn't be the GM. You haven't really earned that position with this team, at least in my opinion. And so if you want to stick around and they want to keep you on the staff in some regard that's somewhat similar to what you did before, that's great. No problem with that. But I just don't think this is someone who should be getting, who should be going past just getting an interview for GM. If they want to interview him, that's okay, right? That's a normal thing. Just unless he nails it and gives you every reason in the world that he is the best guy for the job, probably not the guy you're going to want. So that's what we got here. To me, it is an exciting update for the general manager search. I think we're going to get a really good candidate out of this. Ultimately, looking at this list of guys, I think I could live with any of them, except maybe, I obviously gave my thoughts on Waugh just now. Chad Alexander, I'm not super sold on. It'd be okay. But the rest of these guys, Cunningham would be good. Brown is my favorite. Gladstone's number 2 for me. Trey Brown, I'd also be fine with. Although I think he kind of had a weird background as far as where he's worked and stuff. So he wouldn't be super high on my list. But like I said, Josh Williams, I think I'd be good with too. So these are some very good candidates. I'm excited to see where things fall when Jacksonville starts interviewing. But they've done a really good job so far in who they're targeting in this process. So we'll have to see what happens. But with that said, I am going to wrap this up here. I want to shout out our channel members really quick. Premier Seer 904, Nightmare Eco, Gator John Bites, Scrubber Ducky 500, and Mogar. If I didn't pronounce that right, please let me know. I just got you on this graphic before recording this. So with that all said, thank you guys for watching. If you have any recommendations for stuff you want to see on the channel, definitely let me know. I want to be more active with what we're putting out here in the next few weeks and over the off season in general. I've graduated college, so I've got a lot more time, which is great, just outside of work. So I'd love to get more stuff on this channel going forward. So appreciate y'all watching. Hope you have a great rest of your day. Thanks for your support. And finally, go Jags.